Denise Guarda, Studium. Toufi Saliba, Toda.Network. Paul Lee, Mind.ai. Joshua Hong, Mind.ai. Moderated by Thomas Power, Nine Spokes.
Yes, I think we need to do the introductions one more time.
Yes.
We have had some last-minute changes, so I'll be moderating this panel, and Angelo also kindly accepted to join us for this panel to replace one of the panelists. So, yes, why don't we get going with the introductions for our audience?
Dennis?
Well, I think I was the only one that was there, so
I'm always there too.
He was there, so was. So I think you know about me, so founder and CEO of Studium, writer and author, and I'm as well working a lot in AI, and both on the technology, but as well on thought leadership and regulatory part, and work with governments.
My name is Toufi Saliba. I co-founded ACM AI Decentralized. I'm not sure if you know ACM. It's the Association for Computing Machinery. It's the #1 computer science in the world, 100,000 members globally. So I was elected the global chair for practitioners board at the time, conference committee. And I'm also the author of the Toda protocol, which is a network communication protocol that a lot of blockchains today being built on it, whenever it comes to whether it is Bitcoin, Ethereum, and so on and so forth. It's a communication protocol. And I also run a startup called Toda.Network Corp. So, along with many other things, being father of 6 and maybe 7 now. I'm just kidding. Yes.
And I'm Angelo Dalli, and I'm the CEO of Umnai, and I've been working in AI for many, many years, almost 20 years. So I've seen, the history evolving of AI, and can also anticipate quite well the future of how it's going.
Okay, so we're going to be talking about the AI history and the lessons learned and the future of AI a little bit. So I want to get going with a question for all of you. So we've come a long way since the first Turing test. So which landmarks struck you as turning points in the AI history? That's for all of you.
Should I start?
Yeah.
Well, I think there have been a number of endpoints. For example, when Turing himself came up with the Turing test, which is a kind of slightly semi-flawed test in a way, which has kind of defined and restricted AI to this communication type of mode, which may have not been the best definition of intelligence. But obviously, at that time in the 50s, I mean, you have to give it to the man that it was very difficult to even imagine how a computer looked like, let alone create a test for AI, which is still valid up to the day. I think also the creation, for example, of neural nets, of artificial neural nets, I think was one of the milestones. I think the creation of deep learning is based all on that. Reinforcement learning, I think, was also one of the, in which you have a computer that learns a certain amount of actions via a certain amount of goals and awards and rewards and, and punishment kind of functions. So that was also one of the milestones. And I think also the development of faster chips, of GPUs. Which are normally were starting to be used in video games, but have been very, very well co-opted by the AI community in order to speed up the calculations. And I think this is what led to the current state of a wave in AI regeneration.
Are we going in sequence?
Yeah.
All right. So I think we're very subjective in identifying AI, and we keep changing the definition of AI, which is, I find it interesting. I mean, at some point in time, calculator was AI. And then, oh, no, it's not, because we understand how it works. And And it seems that the more we understand about how a specific thing works, we change the definition. We're like, oh no, it's not AI because we understand it. And then sometimes it's even very subjective because we like to look at AI as if it's a human type of intelligence, but it is called artificial intelligence. Maybe it is intelligence. It doesn't necessarily have to resemble, birds don't fly like airplanes, and that's from one perspective. The other perspective, birds don't necessarily know that airplanes are faster than them. And, at some point, maybe we are birds now and we're still trying to struggle with the idea, no, AI is not more intelligent than us. It's not. Well, maybe it is. And if you show me a single human and I can show you a single machine, and perhaps 99.9% of the tasks, that machine is going to outperform that human. And there's always that 0.1%. Yeah, we didn't get to certain creativity, certain things, but in the tasks that they are demanded, we can have a single machine is going to outperform human today. And we're still saying like, oh no, we're still very far ahead. So,
Anything you want to add?
Yeah, I think probably, so I think with separating, like you said, both of you, and trying to complement. So the definition of artificial intelligence is one thing, but we're not there. Okay, what we have right now is layers that are creating, like you said, the calculator was AI a couple of years ago. So we have to go through the layers of what is working right now and the general intelligence that the previous panel spoke about. So I think at the moment, for me, the most advanced areas where we actually have a breakthrough and actually change the entire world is data. So search engines, and particularly social networks, which at the moment are all run by algorithms that are slowly machine learning. And for us, if you look at Facebook, all our data in Facebook is machine learning driven, and the same with Google and so forth. The second part, and it's probably the part that is more scary, but it's the part where we're advancing in very strong breakthrough, is medicine. So health tech applied to medicine. We're still in early stage because our DNA is not different. My DNA is different from yours and so forth. So when we apply AI to, even if it is machine learning, we could, in theory, cure most of the diseases and cancers in the world. But the problem is that if I have a cancer, hopefully not, my cancer will be different from other person and the DNA is different. So if you apply machine learning to one specific body, it's different from my body to the other and to the other. I work with a Nobel medicine on this, and the complications is that we need super quantum computing power to fix these things. But we are getting there, and I think the innovation is massive on healthcare and healthcare tech. So the third layer, which is mainstream, and you forgot that, is finance. I come from a banking background in fintech, and if you see 90% of the transactions of money in the world are done by machines. So the stock exchanges, the financial centers are all running by actually mostly by algorithms, and a lot of areas of algorithm more advanced, not still massive machine learning, but for instance, most of the hedge funds around the world are using machine learning to manage their operations. So this is 3 of the biggest areas of business in the planet. And for instance, Google owns a huge chunk of healthcare data in the planet. For instance, he has all the data of UK, because the UK government gave access to all the hospitals. So there's a lot of things that are like not still at the level of artificial intelligence, but all of this is working as we speak. It's not in 5 years. So I'm actually very conscious about the breakthrough that was done, but this is still just machine learning. It's still human to machine. It's not still, so we have human to human, human to machine, and machine to machine. And we're starting right now slowly to go to machine, which is deep learning and other things. And on that, there's a lot of work to be done, but it's starting to go very fast.
Yes, and speaking of deep learning, I'm actually going to, I want to talk a little bit about the evolution of deep learning. So supervised and unsupervised learning was a prominent AI breakthrough. So where do you see the evolution of deep learning going? Or how was the evolution of deep learning and where it's going?
I think we have only probably a few companies in the world that can actually say that they're doing that. Definitely is Google, because they bought DeepMind. And DeepMind is probably the most advanced mainstream platform in the planet doing that. And at the end of the day, if you look at the biggest players in deep learning in the world, is definitely Google. Then, of course, there's a lot of experiences in the universities, but I don't consider that mainstream. It's experience in the universities, and I'm involved with a couple of them. But definitely Google has more power in terms of mainstream Western world than almost anyone in the planet. And then, of course, Facebook, but they are much more on data, deep learning data, which is still very early stage. And then, of course, if you look at China, it's a completely different game because China is becoming in a velocity. I think China passed already all the world. They have much more computing power and AI power, but they're using it a lot in terms of things related with the Chinese government, all the political things. So I think definitely the deep mind and the ecosystem around that, because there's a massive ecosystem worldwide on that. And of course, a couple of universities are doing groundbreaking work on that, but it's still very early stage. But of course, on that, we're seeing already, for instance, if you look at Cambridge Analytica, it's using not deep learning, it's machine learning to match data and then using psychology manipulation with more data. Not machine learning, not deep learning, but it's pure deep learning. So deep learning is mostly very few companies that are on that level. And mostly part of the breakthroughs are definitely from Silicon Valley and China.
Absolutely. Anything you guys want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I see the deep learning also. There's a lot of research, but it was still based on stuff that was around in the 90s. I mean, the only thing that has changed was literally the hardware and the data. So I'm excited also to see research beyond deep learning, because deep learning does have its own limits, and I think we will exhaust those limits within like the next 3-4 years. I mean, there's still a lot that you can actually milk out, a lot of usefulness there, but it's starting to show the cracks, especially if we want society to accept AI as part of the common world. And the way I see it evolve, I think that there will always be the next thing being created in universities and companies around the world. We are creating also technology that will take AI beyond deep learning, but I can't talk about it now. We're still doing patents on it. But I think that something that actually has fueled the rise of deep learning, I think, was also the name. Instead of using artificial neural networks, which kind of, sounds quite geeky, they used deep learning, and everyone all of a sudden started capturing the imagination. So sometimes even like little things like this can actually be quite beneficial.
Yeah. But people like names, like to be deep.
That's true, yeah.
And I totally agree, and sometimes names, but some of the things that I'm very familiar with that they're making their way through, and many people in the audience here might notice they're starting utilizing them without necessarily knowing the name. So there's something called HPGA, which is a human-based genetic algorithm, which is a type of genetic algorithm. But instead of having the innovator and the actual validator to be machines, those would be actually a human. So in the actual algorithm itself, you're using the human as part of that algorithm without them knowing. And you get the actual signals from the innovators without them knowing, get signals from other human to validate without them knowing as well. Now, that model existed since about 2001. I've worked deeply into this about 2005, 2006, about something called meritocratic HPGA, and currently being used between like eBay and Google and Intel and so on and so forth. But what's happening right now is something that I kind of coined a name for it. It's called crypto HPGA. And what crypto HPGA is that innovator and the validator, they kind of know what's going on, but they're incentivized. So if you have an incentive to contribute certain content, you're likely to contribute correct content, otherwise you're going to lose money. So it's all about the money. So effectively, the machine ends up paying people money to innovate and paying people money to validate the different kind of people. And while that is happening in the actual triangle, many times for 8 billion people, it ends up learning a lot more from the people to building ontologies and so on and so forth. And one of the companies that, the two guys that you saw there, Paul and Josh, they are working in a company called Mind, which I'm very familiar with, another joint venture that works with them. that uses that crypto HBGA knowingly. Many folks, they use it not knowingly, but it's called crypto HBGA. So hopefully people would like that name.
Another
Maybe.
one.
So it's my panel earlier today. I had some Silicon Valley VCs, and we were talking about some of the opportunities in the AI space and also the challenges AI represents, especially for traditional businesses and governments that are not necessarily or very AI friendly, let's say. So what are some of the best ways for governments and businesses to cope with those challenges?
Well, I'm actually working with a couple of governments, but I think, you created, both of you guys, and I'm as well involved in a lot of associations. I'm part, for instance, of the European Union AI Alliance. But I think the most important thing is a lot of education. Because what we're talking here, probably very few people in the world. And for instance, what you mentioned about the crypto, you put it that name.
HBGA.
It's a big problem right now because this creates manipulation of data and people. And for instance, the algorithms, for instance, just an example, the algorithms of Facebook are doing exactly what you say, not using crypto. So that means the algorithms are trying to make sure that we like something and that we engage, but this creates an addictive. So it creates the addictivity of social media, which all the programmation, even for instance, the devices of Apple recognize that the devices are done in a way that you get addicted to that. So this is actually as an effect in populations and governments, and this is very basic. We're not talking about any more advanced stuff. So this is already a first stage of the machines changing the way we behave, changing a lot of our actions. So I think the first thing is creating awareness for governments, because it's a big problem. And another thing for businesses, I tell all my partners, if you're not in AI, forget it. You are out of business. And for instance, of course, if you talk about AI for a small business, it might be just a simple way of looking at data analytics, Google Analytics, if you're not in German. So I think it's this kind of thing. So we have to start by layers. So first of all, I think the schools, and China is on that level, is fantastic. They oblige all the children to have AI from the beginning. So I think education and then creating awareness for that, that's what I would suggest. And then of course creating part of networks like you guys and me. And I think the European Union is fantastic with this, but it needs to be from the theory to the practice, because it cannot just be blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
I find it not so much challenging.
We're out of time. I'll let you wrap up.
We have 1 minute and 11 seconds. I cannot read behind this. I don't find it challenging to get the government to use AI. I find it challenging to get government to use it the right way. The fastest way to convince many government officials is that if they feel that they are in control right now in the centralized power and trying to do things that could perhaps enslave people, like was happening in China, and they're listening, which is great. They were not at some point. They may not necessarily be the ones in power when their children go to be the ones that they're enslaved, and they're kind of like, oh, holy shit, you know, maybe we shouldn't do that. So luckily, a lot of great minds inside that government, they're actually making me speak again, because I was not supposed to be speak there for a period of time, and it seems that they are making a lot of progress to listen to the people, because the technology is supposed to service the people and not enslave the people. So I find that, but I'll talk a little bit more. I have a keynote in about 40 minutes, and I'm talking more about deep fake and countering deep fake and so on and so forth. And
yeah, and I think, just to keep this very short, I think that the use of AI by governments can be done in very different ways, and I hope that we'll choose the right path, not to oppress people, but to actually generate wealth for society and to assist rather than replace people.
Okay, super. I do hear the wrap it up music, so I think we're out of time. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you so much.
thank you.
How will blockchain affect today's charities? Trust in charities has declined precipitously over the last few years. Can technology reinvigorate this space? Let's find out.